Tectone mocks the Gacha community.
We gotta let them know that we're in charge. We're the Gacha community and we're proud. We gotta stop these bad guys in this community. They didn't like this as much as me. We're gonna take their channel down. Gacha heroes assemble! I'm gonna make an internet meme. I'm gonna make an internet meme on this guy. My name's Jenazad. This thing that everybody likes is actually really shit, actually. We got him, guys. Make sure to go like my Twitter post. Gacha community heroes. Good Lord. Jesus.
This is all of this. I want you to understand that these are all grown, middle-aged men that are fighting over a story about an anime girl.
The recent drama surrounding the Wuthering Waves 2.5 story has spiraled. A complex situation has been flattened and distorted, and a false narrative is starting to take hold. One that paints the entire Wuthering Waves community as a bunch of crybabies who have a meltdown anytime someone doesn't praise the game as much as they're liking. That is an incomplete picture to say the least. My goal here is to set the record straight, rather than adding more fuel into the fire or calling out any single person for drama. I want to lay out the full timeline of events with context so that you, the viewer, can see the entire situation and form your own judgment. Before we dive in, we need to set some ground rules. A few disclaimers are necessary so we are all starting from the same page. First and most importantly, this is not an excuse for harassment. Going out of your way to insult a creator as a person, to send them vitriol or threats, that is never acceptable. This video is an analysis of public actions and their consequences. Second, two things can be true at once. Going out of your way to insult a creator over their personal rating of a video game story is, frankly, cringe. It is counterproductive. But at the same time, Jenazad's reaction to the initial criticism went beyond a poor response. It became an incendiary escalation that poured gasoline on the fire. We will be looking at both of these things. And finally, a personal note. Some of you might know that I have in the past defended Jenazad during a separate incident where people were using a vulnerable moment of mine to attack him.
But Jenazad is here too, bro. What? Says he cared, but hasn't even 𝗖cie𝗽𝗆𝗆𝗵𝘁. F you, man. I cried like a mother, man.
That was a completely different situation, and I defended him because the attacks were unfair. What we are discussing today are his own public actions in this specific conflict. The two are not related, and my goal is to be as fair as possible to the facts. With that foundation laid, let's get into what actually happened, and the story begins in an unexpected place, with a victory. To understand why things went so sideways, we first have to understand the community itself. There is a unique dynamic between the Wuthering Waves player base and the developer Kuro Games. Through a well-documented history of the developers listening intently to feedback and rapidly improving the game, an unusual bond was formed. The community feels less like simple consumers and more like protective stakeholders, deeply invested in the game's direction. And heading into the 2.5 update, all of that investment was focused on one thing: the story's antagonist, Phrolova. There was a very specific widespread fear. In gacha games, there is a predictable pattern where a compelling villain becomes popular, gets a tragic backstory, and a change of heart, and suddenly stops being a villain so they can be sold to you. It is a trope that can completely deflate any narrative stakes. The community was worried Phrolova would fall into this exact pipeline. Content creator MarcoMeatball put this into words perfectly, saying he was deeply concerned that the game would start justifying its monetization by dumbing down its characters, making the entire world feel cheap. He wasn't alone as well. This was the test. Could Kuro resist the easy path and deliver a story with teeth? And then the update arrived, and Kuro delivered. By an overwhelming consensus, the 2.5 story was a triumph. The community erupted. On forums and social media, people called it pure cinema, hailing it as a new benchmark for narrative quality. They got exactly what they wanted. Phrolova remained a complex, compelling, and ultimately villainous character without a cheap redemption arc. This acclaim was also widespread. You had measured positive reviews from respected voices like Gacha Smack. Even creators famously loyal to the competition, like the community labeled Hoyoshil, Mrpokke, gave this story a high rating. When your rival's biggest supporters admit that you did a good job, you know you've created something of genuine quality. So this is the scene: a deeply invested community celebrating a shared collective victory. The 2.5 story transcended being simple content and became a symbol, a testament to their faith in the developers being rewarded. It is important to establish this baseline because it shows this was a community celebrating, not one primed for a fight. Into this atmosphere of near universal praise, the first real note of drama appeared, coming from a content creator named Jenazad. This is where the story actually begins. To understand everything that follows, it is critical to be precise about how it began, because the popular version of this story gets it wrong. Jenazad streamed his playthrough of the story quest, and according to numerous accounts from his own audience, his engagement with the story was compromised. He was seen talking over important cutscenes, constantly interacting with his chat, and generally not giving the narrative his full attention. You can have a look at this clip right here.
Uh-oh. Jesus Christ, okay. Well. 07. You love this art style? Yeah, it's actually pretty cool looking. I wish every cutscene just looked like this. Can't too expensive. It's probably hard to make these kind of cutscenes. I don't know anything about it though. I have no concept of how hard it is. With how much money they make, it's no excuse. I think it's more just like the time. I don't know how long it takes to make these. Probably pretty long. Boku no Pico clears this. So true, King. Let AI do that in the future, it will.
And after finishing, he gave it a 7 out of 10. His main justification was that he found the plot confusing and Phrolova's dialogue too poetic, which diminished his experience. In a sea of 9s and 10s, a 7 will stand out, but the initial backlash came primarily from his own viewers and focused on his own process. Their argument was fundamentally simple. You cannot fairly judge a story for being confusing if you weren't giving the attention required to be understood. It is like skimming through the pages in a mystery novel and then complaining the ending feels unearned. The critique itself becomes illegitimate because the person delivering it didn't do the basic work, or at least that's how people saw it. This gets to the absolute core of the initial conflict. As one person later summarized it, 99% of people do not care about the rating, they cared more about him not paying attention. The community was policing the perceived fairness and diligence of his review rather than his opinion itself. The 7 out of 10 became a symbol of what they saw as low effort critique, and that perceived breach of contract is where the fire actually started. So right now we have this contained dispute. What happened next turned that small fire into a firestorm. In response to this criticism, Jenazad had what can only be described as an on-stream meltdown, a crash out.
Comments mad because I yapped during story. I don't care what they think. Curl bots are a waste of breath, bro. They're worthless. I do not care what those people think. I haven't even looked at the comments. I have a bunch of notifications on YouTube. Do not care what they think. You know, I'm down to read comments for videos. It's not even worthwhile reading comments when it's about Wuthering Waves because it's just the dumbest humans in existence always comment. It's not worth it. They're too stupid to live. It's absurd. It's like, I like Wuthering Waves, but like, man, the online community is just insane, bro. Yeah, they try to pretend that they're so much better than 𝗖cie, but like, they're also shitty. Both can be shitty, man. They always say the craziest shit. Even though I play more Wuthering Waves than them, even though I spend more money on Wuthering Waves than them, even though I probably enjoy the game more than them, and that's why I actually give complaints about things that matter. You know what? Why am I being invited to Curl Fest?
His defense of the review quickly turned into him lashing out. He made a series of inflammatory statements, reportedly declaring that the Wuthering Waves community Kuro bots didn't deserve to live. He had stopped engaging with the critique and began a broadside attack against an entire group. He then compounded this by adopting a strange, elitist stance, suggesting his opinion should matter more because he had spent more money on the game, and he was invited to Kuro Fest. It was a bizarre argument that only served to alienate people further. Instead of addressing the calm critiques in his own comments, he went to Twitter. He found a few extreme tweets from random users, which reframed the entire body of criticism as a work of trolls, rather than the legitimate grievances of his own audience. This all eventually led to what many now consider one of the worst apology videos in the gacha space. Reactions from other creators found it to be a masterclass in non-apology. He was described as shadow boxing against arguments that nobody made, spending most of the video justifying his 7 out of 10 score while barely addressing the on-stream meltdown that caused the real explosion. The top comment of his video put it perfectly. Bro will talk about anything but the crash out. 7 out of 10. It is important to be perfectly clear here. The personal insults directed at Jenazad are, in no uncertain terms, unacceptable. Crashing out over someone's rating is cringe, but it is equally clear that Jenazad's reaction was a disproportionate and incendiary escalation. He fundamentally transformed the conflict. It was no longer a debate about a video game review. By insulting the entire community, he made it a matter of respect. He was trying to win an argument. The community was now trying to recover from an insult. That is a very different kind of conversation. Now, the conflict was a public spectacle, and like any spectacle, the story began to change as it spread, losing its nuance. The conflict got spread into the wider gacha sphere, where it was largely flattened and mischaracterized. The primary vector for this was the influential creator Tectone. After hearing Jenazad's side, the complex situation was boiled down to a simple, dramatic, and incorrect talking point. Wuthering Waves fans are harassing a creator over a 7 out of 10 score.
Uh-oh. Yeah, Wuthering Waves community is so different from Genshin's community, huh? Yeah, only the Genshin community would go in on a content critic for giving someone a 7 out of 10, huh? Oh, man. Man, oh, man. What a egotistical bastard. What a piece of shit. What a massive scumfuck degenerate. Oh. Hey. I warned everybody. Daddy was gone for 3 months, and look at the mess we've made. And here's the thing, man, I'm not cleaning it up this time.
This new narrative was patent. It was easy to understand, dramatic, perfectly into the drama farming economy of online content, quickly becoming the dominant version of events for outsiders. And yet, this version of the story is demonstrably false when you look at the community's history. Take the case of Doro44. He made a video that was 95% praise, but even he received significant backlash. The reason? The backlash stemmed from a very small segment where the community felt like he was being hypocritical about his stance on fan service. Compared to other games, right? Their issue was with the perceived lack of consistency and fairness. Similarly, the drama around the creator 𝗖cie𝗽𝗆𝗆𝗵𝘁 saw the community push back because he had a habit of posting incredibly vague critiques. When he was asked for clarification, he would crash out. The core problem was the complete lack of substance. Looking at these cases together, a clearer pattern emerges. This isn't a community that rejects criticism. It is a community that rejects what it perceives as low effort, bad faith, or hypocritical criticism. The entire drama boils down to one thing. This community has a powerful, almost allergic immune response to misinformation and, for the lack of better term, bullshit. They get mad when they feel someone is making things up or arguing unfairly, and they will call it out. This is where the toxic community label becomes such a useful, powerful rhetorical weapon. It allows a creator to preemptively invalidate any criticism. By framing the community as inherently toxic, any pushback, no matter how well reasoned, can simply be dismissed as more proof to that toxicity. A tactic that shifts the burden of proof from the person making a flawed argument onto the community trying to correct it. With the narrative completely distorted, the conflict seemed destined to burn on indefinitely in a perfect feedback loop. And then we got a pivotal moment of de-escalation. This came in a form of a recorded stream call between Saintontas and Tectone. In this conversation, Saintontas acted as a conduit for the community, methodically laying out the full nuanced context. He calmly explained that the initial issue was about the review process, and the subsequent firestorm was a reaction to personal insults, separate from the 7 out of 10 score. And I think this call seemed to work. The immediate creator-on-creator conflict cooled down. However, as the heat dissipated, the focus of the conversation began to shift. As often happens when these conflicts widen, the discussion moved from the specifics of the incident to a more general systemic problem. The new subject became the broad, abstract concept of gacha tribalism. This shift in focus, whether intentional or not, had a clear effect. When the conversation turns to a massive issue like tribalism, the actions of any single individual naturally fade into the background. It becomes a discussion about the entire forest, and the specific trees that started the fire are easily forgotten. It is a much broader and in many ways easier topic to discuss than a messy personal controversy. The unfortunate consequence of this pivot, however, was that the community's original legitimate grievances were largely left behind. While the interpersonal drama between creators found a path to resolution, the core complaints about the review process and the subsequent insults ended up being sidelined. And so the drama quote-unquote ends, not with a resolution to the central issue, but with the conversation changing entirely, setting the stage for similar misunderstandings to happen all over again, just like it did 5 months ago and 7 months ago. We are going to fight the same battles again and again and again and again and again.
Did I ever tell you what the definition of insanity
This was never truly about a 7 out of 10 score. That was just the spark. The conflict was a domino effect. It began with a review people felt was unfair because the creator seemed distracted. It blew up when the same creator had a massive, insulting crash out on his stream. And finally, as the story was picked up and retold by other big creators, it was simplified down to its most basic parts, losing the complicated truth in the process. This brings us to the label toxic positivity. What this incident and others like it show is that this label is often a rhetorical weapon. It is a tool used to dismiss a community that, as the evidence suggests, values the fairness above the praise. They are not fighting against criticism. They are fighting against what they perceive to be misinformation and bad faith engagement. This is the same battle that has been fought in this space for months. A reoccurring clash between a player base that values substance and a content ecosystem that can at times prioritize spectacle. Well, ultimately, this conflict is a system of a deeper dysfunction. The exasperation from the community, the feeling of talking to a brick wall. It stems from this fundamental breakdown in communication. But I guess that's my observation of the situation. Leave your thoughts below. And as always, that is all from me, 𝗖cie𝗽𝘆𝗵𝗁, and I will see you in the next one. Cheers!